Good morning, and thank you for joining me. My name is Elizabeth May, leader of the Green Party of Canada, Member of Parliament for Saanich, Gulf Islands. As a member of this Parliament, I've seen many bills pushed down our throats over the last few weeks, but actually none is as egregious as this bill, the Omnibus crime bill, which will change our criminal justice system to one that is less compassionate, more expensive, and less effective at protecting Canadians from crime. These are the conclusions from every witness. I participated in the hearings and read the transcripts for those where I wasn't attending. However, as a person in the Parliament who is not able to be a member of the Justice Committee, I actually have strangely larger abilities to present amendments at report stage. And that's why today I'm very proud to be tabling roughly 50 amendments, which I hope the Speaker will find in order, to take this last chance to improve the bill, to get rid of mandatory minimums in the criminal code, to change the provisions that are most egregious in terms of judicial discretion, and to provide a review, an annual review of the way this bill is being implemented. I'm very proud and pleased to have two of the experts whose opinion I really value. They're here, of course, in nonpartisan spirit, nothing to do with the Green Party, but I asked them to be here to share thoughts on this bill at report stage. I'd first like to ask Michael Spratt from the Criminal Lawyers Association to speak to his views of this bill.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here on behalf of the Criminal Lawyers Association in support of these amendments. Bill C-10 represents an erosion of judicial discretion. Judicial discretion is one of the fundamental pillars of our justice system, and that is a judge who is familiar with the circumstances of the case, the circumstances of the offender, a judge who sits in the community and has heard the input and statements from victims, is in the best position to impose an appropriate, a fair, and a just sentence. Bill C-10, through the use of mandatory minimum sentences, erodes that discretion and weakens one of the fundamental pillars of our justice system. The mandatory minimum sentences, the evidence shows, does little to make our community safer, and in fact, it does quite the opposite. It inhibits the ability to rehabilitate offenders. Through judicial discretion and the use of alternative sentencing methods such as conditional sentences, just and fair sentences can be imposed, and a one-size-fits-all solution is avoided. The amendments as proposed strengthen the discretion available to our judges, eliminates mandatory and minimum sentences, and really embraces evidence as opposed to ideology. It's refreshing to see evidence actually embraced and to see ideology cast aside. And for those reasons, the Criminal Lawyers Association supports these amendments, and we thank Ms. May for bringing them forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And I'd like to ask Kim Pate, who is the Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies, working for justice for women who are in prison. Thank you. Kim?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be here. Our organization has voiced concerns about this bill since before it was tabled. We, in fact, voiced concerns about the bills that it is the accumulation of prior to this session in Parliament. We call on all members of Parliament, not just one member of Parliament, but all members of Parliament and all senators, to take seriously what this bill signals in terms of a change of Canadian values, a value for human rights, a value for the rule of law, a value for the importance of weighing evidence, all evidence, whether it's sociological evidence, whether it's evidence of who's victimized, whether it's evidence of what works to prevent people from being victimized, all of that evidence, and all of the body of law that has long been our valued and important history in this country. We see now, more than ever, we must resist the rush to judgment, the rush to punish, as a way to pretend that we are trying to address and prevent victimization. We know that, in fact, just looking to what's happened south of the border, in other jurisdictions as well, that going down this path will not prevent victimization. In fact, it will lead to further evisceration of social programs, healthcare, education, all of the things and the types of interventions that do prevent people from being victimized and assist people who end up going from being victimized and marginalized to end up being criminalized and imprisoned, because that's often who's filling our jails. We know that the fastest growing prison population are women, Indigenous women in particular, and people with mental health issues. So we know that prisons are not treatment centers. We know that jails are not the shelters battered women and abused children need. We know that, in fact, all of the resources that are going into more and more punitive approaches can and should be better used to ensure that we have things like a national child care program, things like appropriate services for people to prevent them from being victimized, and if they have been victimized, to assist them once they are, things like an adequate pension program for those who are aging, things like adequate social services, things like fair wages, fair minimum wages in particular, things like good universal health care, and things like adequate and important fulfilling education for all. We see situations in some of the particularly some of our Indigenous communities, whether it's housing, undrinkable water, all of these things and all of these approaches can be remedied. We don't need to be putting those Indigenous people in jail to make sure they are housed, clothed, and fed. And so we support the move to change the bill, but we most importantly think that there should be a provision, there should be one major amendment, and every member of Parliament, every senator should stand behind it, and that is to delay the enactment of this bill in whatever form it ends up coming out of Parliament today and into the Senate. In whatever form, delay the enactment until we have a full assessment of whether these are the values that Canadians want to continue to support. If any have supported them, we question whether, in fact, Canadians do support these values. And we question how, in fact, this bill will be funded. How will provinces, territories, municipalities ensure that they can fund this? How will it change the complexity of of our communities? And how will we ensure that we don't end up with a much meaner, more punitive, unsafe Canada for many, many more people? And so we encourage the delay in the enactment until we have that full assessment, until everybody can sign off on the fact that this won't mean a fundamental change in our values, and it won't mean a huge tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars in cost to all of us. Our tax dollars can be far better spent. Thank you.
Le projet de loi Omnibus sur le crime, ici au Canada, représenté par C10, apporte un changement fondamental au système juridique au Canada. C'est un changement, absolument d'un changement, comme Kim a dit, des valeurs canadiennes. Il est éliminé, c'est très important de souligner que ces changements retirés des pouvoirs discrétionnaires des juges. C'est absolument essentiel que chaque cas, il y a le potentiel pour les juges de faire une décision individuelle sur les preuves qui sont montrées par les avocats. Mais avec les mandatoires minimums, ce n'est pas possible. Et éliminer les discrétions des juges, c'est un changement fondamental. Il a aussi augmenté la population dans les prisons, avec un coût des milliards, mais en ce moment, nous n'avons pas le coût. Le gouvernement n'a pas accepté les débats sur les questions de qui. Nous avons évidemment les provinces comme Québec qui ont dit que ce n'est pas égal de placer sur les provinces les nouveaux coûts très, très sérieux pour le système juridique. For me, as a member of Parliament, I am extremely honored and I am very grateful to the people of Saanich Gulf Islands for sending me to Ottawa. I receive many, many letters and emails from my constituents asking that this bill be stopped, asking that we learn the lessons of places like Texas that have brought in mandatory minimums and found that it just drove up the costs of dealing with criminal justice without delivering greater security. Throwing people in jail may be satisfactory in some sort of punitive media blitz, but it doesn't do a thing for eliminating crime in our country. It actually puts people in crime school and deprives them of the opportunity to get the treatment and the help they may need. Those of us who've opposed this bill in the House of Commons are routinely described on the floor of the House as people who don't care about victims and only care about criminals. Nothing could be further from the truth. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in Canadian values. And we believe that by ensuring that kids have the things they need to grow up healthy, including programs to keep them off the streets, to help kids get a good education, those programs are the ones that make our streets safer. It costs far less to keep a kid in school than to keep him in prison. But we're making a fundamental choice here right now, folks. We're making a decision that this is a country that would rather keep kids in prison than put the money into the social programs that we need to keep them on the straight path to a good and secure future. This bill represents a line in the sand between the Canada we've known and some new, unknown place where none of us have lived. Please, I'm asking all other members of Parliament to look at these amendments I'm putting forward today, to give them a chance at report stage, and to remove the most egregious parts of this legislation. Thank you. Merci.